Okay, it is 1 o'clock and we are ready to call this meeting to order. This is the 2026 or July 26th Special Ed Advisory Council meeting, and we would like to welcome all of the people who are here and as well as online. And we have presenters here today who are going to go through several topics for us. We are going to call this meeting to order and start out with introductions. So Jennifer, would you be willing to start out? Let me bring the microphone to you. See if I can figure this out. You want me to go first? Okay, I'm Trish Backman, and I represent kids who are justice involved in the state of Kansas, and as special education teacher at Lawrence Gardner High School.
Hi, I'm Jennifer King, and I represent charter schools.
Hello, my name is Tobias Wood. I'm with the Kansas Board of Regents. I represent the state agencies for the state of Kansas.
And he's being shy because he's also the chair-elect for SEAC, and he just didn't want you to know that. I'm Bert Moore, and I'm the State Director of Special Education and Title Services. I'm also the Secretary to SEAC.
Thank you.
I'm Lena Kisner, and I represent administrators of special education programs.
I'm Christy Cotton, and I am the State Interagency Coordinating Council staff member.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Carrie Haig, and I'm an assistant director on the Special Education and Title Services team.
Hi, everyone. Wayne Ball. I represent the federal centers at the Office of OSEP and Office of Special Education. I work for 4 different centers, and I'm just excited to be here presenting with you once again and see some new faces and some faces that are new and way new, and see the ones that have been around for a while. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Jim McNeese on the State Board of Education.
I'm Marvin Miller. I'm the secondary special education teacher representative and a parent of a child with a disability.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Kuzinski. This is the first meeting that I've attended in SEAC in person. Everything has been virtual, so it's very nice to see everybody in person here today. I'm representing the School for the Deaf and Blind. Thank you. Nice to see you all.
I'm Kayla Love. I am the administrative specialist on that at KSDE on the special education team.
Thank you very much. We have 2 interpreters who are here today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Peter Oakland, and I am one of the sign language interpreters for today. And this is my team. I'll let her introduce herself.
And my name is Kim Enos. Thank you.
Thank you. As we have heard from a few others, this is also my first in-person meeting. This is a little bit different because we're doing kind of a hybrid model, as we are familiar with the term in special education for all of our alternate plans right now. We have some joining us on Zoom, and even though they can't interact with us, they are here and able to hear and see what we're talking about during our meeting, so they are going to participate that way. Thank you. And our wonderful sound and tech guy, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Eric. I'm from KSDE IT.
Thank you. I can hold it if we need to. Thank you. Okay, so now if we would move to the next order of business, we have a time that is dedicated for public comment. Do we have any public comment at this time? We do not have anybody that submitted ahead of time. Okay. So if we go ahead and move on, we are going to introduce Wayne Ball, who introduced himself from OSEP. He is going to go through Robert's Rule of Order, our bylaws, and Mr. Burt Moore will come up and then discuss the bylaws in the conference agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, welcome again. I was just thinking back today as I was getting ready to start the meeting. My first SEAC meeting in Kansas was in 1999, 23 years ago. I've been providing technical assistance to the state since that time, so it's just so nice to be back here in person. And you know, I enjoyed doing it virtually last year, but it's just so much better to, you know, be able to see everyone here. So the PowerPoint, Kaylee, you want to pull up for me? Perfect. Thank you. Well, first of all, congratulations. You know, you're a very elite group. We're required in statute to have a state advisory panel, and you're appointed by state officials, and it's required by the Office of Special Ed Programs and the Department of Education that a state have an active advisory committee. And everything that I'm going to cover today, kind of in our orientation, comes out of statute. So it's not something to be taken lightly, and it's certainly such an important part of the state's work, and the advising that you give to Burt and his staff is just invaluable. So we do appreciate having you here, and we appreciate, you know, the opportunity to be able to, you know, share a little about the regulations with you. So let's get this guy working. Okay. First of all, you know, we have the Robert's Rules of Order in your packet today, and I encourage all of you to really go through this packet in detail. They got some great resources in here, but your bylaws are here, and all of the federal regulations and state regulations required around SEAC. And it says in our bylaws that you'll follow Robert's Rules of Order as kind of in conducting your meetings and as members. So I pulled together just a little handout a few years back, and I actually borrowed it from the Utah Parent Center about a quick reference guide on using Robert's Rules of Order. And it kind of just gives you a walkthrough of the procedures, how to ask questions, how to make motions, those kinds of things. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time walking through that with you because I know you can read it. But please take a look at that, and then that'll help you with going forward in your meetings and if you have any questions. So I don't know why we're not advancing. So page down is not working. That one, honest one. Okay, good. So the orientation is also required each year by the state, and it's required in federal statutes. And it's really just kind of a nice walk-through reminder of why you're here and the things that you're going to be doing. But just some of the demographics about the council, that this is put together as being representative of the state of Kansas. And each of you, as you introduced yourself today, said you were representing, you know, a different division, correctional or, you know, institutions, those kinds of things. And you're their voice. And so in looking at your work, you always want to think about, you know, what is my constituency really want me to do? How do they want to proceed? And really portray the thoughts around the state. And that's a large job. Kansas is a large state. So note that Kansas does include giftedness as part of the advisory panel, which is allowable. But because of different funding sources and things, we always break out the difference between the gifted programs and our special education programs. So the membership, and I know that you can look this through your book, but just quickly running through, take a glance here and see where you're representing. But it's a pretty nice list of covering the state with the different agencies. We also have some ex officio members, and Kansas has really done a good job of inviting some other members to the panel. The first page I just showed you was a required panel. This is additional people that can certainly provide input and guidance to it. They're not voting members, but they're welcome to our meetings and certainly welcome to, chime in. So the Parent Training and Information Center, Disability Rights Center, Kansas State Education Committee designee, and the State House Education Committee designee. And I think it's so important to have that representation along with the other required people in this group. So there's a special rule that 51% of the majority of the members of this panel must be individuals with disabilities and or parents, guardians of children with disabilities. So we feel a strong connection to our disability community. That's, again, required in the federal statute. So one of the most significant contributions of each council member is representing your stakeholder group, as I said a couple minutes ago. It's so important that as you're representing the groups, if you can kind of do your homework before you come to the meetings, if there's issues going on in the state or anything in a particular area that you're responsible for, reach out and try to gain as much information, try to get the pulse of the group that you're representing, and bring that back to this meeting. I think that's extremely important. Guests, we welcome guests. We don't get a lot of guests, and which is kind of interesting, and I do these across the country. But we do provide an area if the guest comes that they can certainly join. And now with our virtual platform, we have some other opportunities to join the meeting that we haven't had in the past. So the primary role, and this is so important, is advisory to the State Office of Special Education, advising Bert and his staff about the unmet needs in the state of Kansas and what needs to happen. And I can tell you, over the years, Kansas has just done an amazing job of having that working relationship between the panel and the state director and representing what the people in the state want. So I know you'll keep up that tradition. So in just thinking about advisory, it's to give advice, to inform, to counsel, to recommend, to suggest, and to guide. There's a lot of moving parts there. But the more we hear and the more we know about what the constituents want, the more effective the council is going to be. So just thinking about these responsibilities that, an issue may come to you as a council. And so you have an opportunity to give your voice as a member experience, your individual thoughts. You can give stakeholder input. You can get member discussions. You can bring in resource information, but at the bottom line, you really want to be able to give some objective advice that will hopefully improve services for children and youth with disabilities. I mean, the one reason we're all here is to improve the outcomes for children with disabilities. Advocacy, there's a place for advocacy at the council meetings, and it's very important to hear both voices and the other side coming in. And so during the discussions, you might take sides as far as your own personal beliefs, but hopefully then the council will come to consensus and you will represent the voice of your group that you're representing. So you may not always totally agree with the group that you're representing, but you can express your viewpoints, but also express theirs. And we think that is so important as well. Special interest advocacy, the protection and advocacy, disability organizations, professional organizations, again, all bring something to the table that's very important, and we want to be able to hear those voices. So looking at the council procedures, we adhere to all of the state open meeting laws. We have a requirement of when this meeting has to be advertised, how it has to be publicized, and those things out in the public across the state. this is one area that's been really interesting with the federal government, where they said, you know, we can't use federal funds to buy food. In the federal statute, it says we should try to provide an opportunity for the council to have, you know, meals and refreshments, because we know you're traveling in. We try to make the most out of having all-day meetings and those things, so it's strongly encouraged that we provide it as we did the lunch for you today. So it's allowable, so Bert, you won't get in trouble. Good. So just some kind of, I think, common sense suggestions that I have for you, and that is that close working relationship with the state director, providing this membership orientation, each of you understanding the council functions and your functions, the fact that it's advisory, not advocacy in nature, and that you have an opportunity to discuss the current trends and issues across the state in special education. That's a huge lift. We, some recommendations for the council. The priorities determined by data from the state performance plan and annual performance report. You review that each year. Kansas just received meets requirements from the federal government for the 12th, 13th time, Bert, in one of the #1 states in the country to have met requirements that much. So evidently you're giving some really good advice. So congratulations on that. We have a connection with our Part C partners in the health department and our birth to 3 children. I know that SEAC in the past has had some combined meetings with the advisory panel from the early childhood segments. And all of us are here to support the improvements and the improvement efforts that the State Education Association is looking at. Any questions so far? Okay. Just the big picture in your orange book, it's kind of got the state structure of the State Board of Education, Special Education, and the advisory panel. This is the national picture from the U.S. Department of Education. And again, you're very much part of that organizational structure that it shows very specifically the Special Education Advisory Panel and reporting up through and working with the state education agency. So you're not only on the state level, but you're representing at the national level as well. General supervision, we talk about the oversight that the state of Kansas and Bert and his staff have over the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And back in, I think it was 2004 or 6, they had just reauthorized, the last time IDEA was reauthorized. The Office of Special Ed Programs brought in about 75 people from across the country into Kansas. We actually met just out of Topeka, and to talk about what is general supervision, what should we be doing, and we came up with this puzzle and kind of put all the pieces together and said that, Bert, all you have to do is make all these things work together. I mean, it's pretty simple. And of course, that's exactly what they've done. The other unforgettable thing about that meeting, it was on the 23rd of December. We had a major snowstorm in Colorado. Every entry and exit in the state was closed. I got home and had 4 foot of snow on the level. So I got to spend Christmas in Kansas. It was fun at the hotel. But we've really utilized that meeting in how we talk about the relationships, and I think it's been really invaluable for the advisory panels to kind of see the big picture and to see all the different areas that we're responsible for and have to give guidance to. You know, we came up with the state performance plan back in the last reauthorization. and we originally had 20 indicators. We have whittled that down to 17, but Carrie and Bert, the staff, have just worked so hard with all of our LEAs on improving their state performance, looking at the annual performance report, and that's kind of the document that gets us to our meets requirements. So it's, you can look at the different areas, but it's pretty comprehensive across from our preschool and our transitions and high school and the state systemic improvement system. That again is an important part of you reviewing every year, and any changes to those and changes in indicators, Bert will bring to you in the advisory panel for your advice and to be able to work with. There's also a national SEAC. I put the web link in there. You can certainly access that. They've got great information on resources, announcements that come out from the Department of Education or across the country. They have some national quarterly webinars that you're certainly welcome to attend if you're really interested in that federal level. SEAC contacts our representatives on the council. Jim, great picture. I pick on Jim because, you know, he's been here so long with us. So any questions? I think that hopefully it just gives you a little refresher of, you know, some of your duties. But again, take a look at the orange manual and go through that. And anytime you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Bert and he'll contact me if he needs to get some advice or response. But I just want to thank you again for being here and look forward to the rest of our meeting. Thank you.
No, I don't need anything. You all have the bylaws in your orange notebook. I believe it's the second tab. I'm just going to walk you through those very quickly. I didn't bring it up on the screen. Sorry, you people watching the stream. This is what you're going to see. But I wanted you to be aware of what we put in the bylaws and some of the meaningful reasons why it's there. You've got a table of contents that describes all of the chapters within the bylaws. It's on the first page. Then you have the introduction, and I think the important thing in the introduction is that you are advisory and you've become a critical arm of the State Board of Education, because we as a SEAC now give quarterly updates to the State Board, and we'll be giving one in August. So I want you to know that your voice is being heard, and issues that we're talking about here we're bringing before the State Board, and they are listening because they ask a lot of questions. I think Trish can tell you that, and Jennifer, when they participated in those with the State Board. But we do advocate for students with exceptionalities, and I might describe the difference between student with disability and student with exceptionality. The student with a disability means they qualify under IDEA as a student that receives specialized instruction through an IEP. A student with exceptionality includes gifted and students with disability. So if we ever say students with exceptionalities, we're including in our state requirement students with giftedness. If we say students with disabilities, then we are not recognizing the state requirement for giftedness. So that's important, so that if you're ever talking to the council about all students in Kansas that qualify for IEPs, you're actually talking about students with exceptionalities. That's a little off of the chart, but I thought I'd bring that up. We have the board vision. This is important for everyone to understand, that we are connected to our state board because our advisory capacity is to the state board, so that we can recommend to them any actions or things that we think need to have priority for their consideration. And they are listening. thanks to Jim McNeese, which I really am thankful for his leadership as a state board member, asking that we provide those quarterly updates. We have a mission from the Kansas State Board of Education, and you'll notice that it talks about preparing Kansas students for lifelong success. And that's critical that we think in terms of lifelong. School doesn't end, and then the student goes into a different environment without the supports and the services that we have given them to be successful beyond our school door. So we think that that's important. Also, Kansas leads the world in success of each student. That is the Kansas CAN vision. The successful Kansas high school graduate, you'll notice they have academic, cognitive, technical, employability, and civic engagement. Outcomes for measuring progress, these are state board outcomes, and you'll notice that one of those is social emotional growth measured locally, and that ties into our standards for social emotional and character education. On the next page, you'll find their mission, the Special Ed and Title Services team. Our goal is to advocate for our students and also to support excellence, equity, and lifelong learning. And then we have our belief statements, which this council developed. Now we have council memberships. These are the roles that we are to ensure that are covered within our state so that we have wide representation from various agencies and parents of students with disabilities and those that serve students with disabilities, and they're all on that page. It's on the next page too. If you have the time later, you might want to review this. And then we've added the ex officio members, which includes the official Parent Training and Information Center for Kansas, which is Families Together, the Kansas State Board of Education, the Disability Rights Center, which is the official Protection Advocacy Center for Kansas, and then we have the past SEAC president who can be a member when needed. And we did add in the Kansas Association of Special Ed Administrators 2 years ago to provide updates to us as an ex officio member, so we probably need to get them added, Kayla, into our bylaws. And then here are considerations for membership. We want to make sure that we cover all 10 state board regions. We found that out when we brought membership lists to the state board. They let us know they want to be represented in each of the board regions. And then it's someone who can support diverse populations and provide us with the best information possible to support the work of the council. The tenure, 3-year terms, and you can serve a second 3-year term in the same position. That doesn't mean that you couldn't come back in a different position after you finish that second 3-year term. We do have an extension for the president or past president. If it should fall on that 7th year, then we allow them, like we did Rebecca Helgett, to attend that extra year while they're serving in that role. Here are your responsibilities. I'm not going to read them to you, but please take the time when you find a moment to look over the responsibilities. But you really are advising and recommending to the state on what you think we need to be considering as effective practices for students with disabilities, and in our case, exceptionalities. We have our committees. The one committee that we have currently is the membership committee. We do have one position that's open, and that's for an administrator of special education programs. So we will be getting that advertised and pulling that committee together. And then as we poll those members that aren't here, if anyone has moved from their position or is no longer interested in serving, we may have additional members. We have an application. The application gets sent to candidates. Candidates fill out the application. The membership committee reviews those candidates and decides on which candidate will be recommended, considering the state board regions and whether they meet the 51% requirement, because we have to have 51% of our members as a person with a disability or a student with a disability within their home up to age 26. And that's clarified in here too. We have the format for public comments, which you got to experience today. We have our regular meetings scheduled. There are 4 of them that are scheduled, I believe it tells us. We do have a 2-day meeting in January typically. Then we can call special meetings if we need to. If we ever do that, we typically do that via Zoom for a quick response that we need. Let's say the state board's going to meet next week. We have a recommendation to make to the state board. We're not scheduled to meet with them until October. Then we want to make sure that we get information to the state board. We can have a special called meeting. Public input, written input is encouraged for anyone who can't be here to provide us with comments so we could read it out during the public comment time. You then have the role of special ed and title services. That's where the secretary, that's my position. I serve in that position as your official secretary so that I can be your conduit to get your information out to the different groups that need it. And then you've got our council meetings, meeting norms, which we just went over with Wayne pretty much. Talks about our quorum. We don't have a quorum today. We need 11 members because there are 21 official members. We have to have 11 to meet the 50% majority, 51% if you will, and we don't have that today. So we can't make an official vote today, but we can certainly recommend things to bring back to our next meeting. We have our council procedures defined. I know this is boring and takes a long time, but I want to get through it with you because it's really painless. And then we have the appendix, and this is where you'll see our Kansas State Board of Education chart, which talks about the role of the Special Education Advisory Council in relationship to the Special Ed and Title Services team. And then it talks about all of the inputs that go into the Special Education Advisory Council. You'll also find the federal regulations that define why we have special education advisory councils. We have the Kansas statute that describes what the purpose and the duties and composition and the meetings, et cetera, under statute. And you'll notice that it does say expenses will be paid in the statute. That's how we're able to do the meals, et cetera. And then we have compensation that's defined at the back for your mileage and expenses. And we have the state board list of members. And by the way, it's important that you vote in the primary. We have 3 board members up for re-election, and we have 1 board member who decided not to run. And so there will be, we know at least 1 new member, but 3, I think it's Michelle Dombrowski, Jim Porter, and Jean Clifford are the 3 that are up for election. And Janet's not running, so she's finally going to retire from the state board. So I know, God bless her. She's special. She really is. So as far as the agenda for the meeting, how many of you are staying for the entire conference? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 of you. So I wanted to make you aware that tomorrow morning we start at 8 o'clock. We'll have our general session in the Eagle Ballroom downstairs. If you came downstairs, you walk by the Eagle Ballroom as you were coming from the hotel over to this wing. And that's where we'll have general session. I'll do opening remarks. And then we're going to have Barudi Kefele. Kayla's shaking her head, so I got that name right. Barudi is the principal and will be sharing information with us. And then Jane will thank Barudi, and we will go to the Tazin Marketplace. Now, the Tazin Marketplace is where we have all of our Tazin projects and also special projects set up. And individuals that requested a booth, they will all be in the Tazin Marketplace, and that will be, I believe, I'm trying to think if that's in the Eagle Ballroom or where it is, because I don't see it on our schedule. It'll be in Cypress? Thank you, Carrie. So it's going to be in Cypress, which is where we had lunch across the way. And then we'll have concurrent sessions at 9:30 to 10:30, so you can select whichever one you want. Then we'll have another general session that Scott Gordon, who is the attorney that advises us at KSDE, and he's going to be providing on the ESI, Emergency Safety Interventions, and that will be interesting for him to be providing you with a state perspective on ESI. Then we're going to have lunch until 1 o'clock, and then we come back, actually during lunch, I need to clarify, at 12 o'clock, lunch starts at 11:45, 12 o'clock I will introduce Dr. Watson. Dr. Watson is the Commissioner of Education for the state of Kansas, and then he will introduce Dr. Ben Proctor, our new Division of Learning Services Deputy Commissioner. And I don't know that Dr. Proctor plans to speak, but he just wants to meet and greet you all and say hello and give you a little pep talk. But Dr. Watson will have a formal program while we eat. Then we come back after lunch to concurrent sessions, and they're up here. All the concurrents, I believe, are up here. Then I think we're done. That's at 2 o'clock. I don't see anything after 2 unless I'm missing something. Does somebody have something after 2 tomorrow? Is there another one? Let me look, because here we go. I need to look on the backside. We have a general session. I've got this schedule. Well, anyway. So we have a general session at 2:30. I'll be introducing and moderating something called Hot Topics, which we're trying for the first time this year. We will have 6 different individuals that will be presenting, and they'll each get approximately 8 minutes to present. Those will be Doug Boleen. He'll talk about title programs. Brian Dempsey will have some special ed updates. Amanda Peterson is our early childhood director. She'll have some slides. Dean Zeich will have fiscal update, and then we'll have an update from John Harding from the School for the Blind, and then we'll have one from Luann Barron from the School for the Deaf. Then at 3:25, I'll thank everybody and ask them to go to the Tazen Marketplace for a short break. And then we'll have another general session at 3:45 until 4:30 that Shanna is going to be introducing the speaker, and Brian will be her backup, and they'll introduce Jennifer Montgomery, who's going to be talking about human trafficking, which seems to be a serious concern here in Kansas. Now, I think that's when tomorrow ends, at the end of that session. I got it right. See, I did something right. I'm so glad. Then on the 28th, we start out at 7:15 to 8 o'clock will be a light breakfast. And then from 8 to 9, we will have the session start with breakouts. And there are 4 scheduled. I believe one of them, I'm trying to see if Linda Wilkerson's had to be canceled because Linda was ill. So she won't be here, so we have 3. Then Tazen Marketplace for the last time will be from 9 to 9:30. Then we'll have concurrent sessions from 9:30 to 10:30. And then we'll have a general session with Dr. Craig Neuenswander, I have to get it right. It was Brad Neuenswander. It's Craig Neuenswander. Spell their name exactly the same, but like to pronounce them differently. And also Dale Brungart from School Finance will provide an update. Then we have from 1:30 until 4, the Management Information System that's required training for administrators of special education. So from 1:30 to 4. And Lena, could you tell us when the KC meeting is going to be?
Yes, the KC meeting is immediately following the general session on Wednesday. Should start around 4:40.
Thank you. So Casey will have a meeting of their members from 4:45, I believe, until 6:30. 1 hour. Hey, I'm going to time you. Till 5:45 for Casey. Is there any question on the conference schedule? We have some really great concurrent sessions and breakouts for you this year. So we want you to enjoy it and give us feedback on what you think in the evaluation that will come out so that we'll know how to better plan it next year. Any questions? I didn't put you to sleep. I really was afraid that somebody would nod off on me after lunch. So thank you for staying awake, and I'm going to turn it back to Trish.
Okay, I believe next up is Kayla, and she's going to go over the reimbursement for us?
Alright, so in your orange binders, you all should have received, it's on the second tab in there, a reimbursement form. So anytime we attend in person, which we'll be having more in-person upcoming meetings, so we will get you a new one for each meeting that we have. So just in general, we'll need you to fill these out and then attach receipts such as your tolls or taxis or shuttles or any airfare and your hotel receipts as well, so we can get you reimbursed for those. And then we will also be reimbursing per diem for the day or for the time of the conference or the meeting. And then per dime, per diem. It is just so depending on the location of the meeting is how much you guys will get for a total amount of days. We divided it out by any meals that are provided to you are automatically excluded from those since we are paying for those to give to you. But like dinners or anything else would be paid for by us to you guys. You'll be reimbursed for those. So if you guys just fill out that, and then we will need W-9s from those that I have not already received them from. And then for those, it'll just be if you have your company who's paying for it, we will reimburse the company. Otherwise, we will reimburse yourself if you guys are putting up the bill for it. I believe. Any questions at all? All right. Trisha?
So we have a couple options here because we're ahead of schedule. So if you guys would like to, I know we're after lunch. If anybody's wanting to take a 10-minute break, go ahead and raise your hand. We can get up and move around a little bit. Or Jim and I could continue on and we can have our discussion about the graduation requirement task force. Anyone in favor of taking a break? Okay, I believe it looks like nobody's wanting a break, but Jim, if Jim McNeese would. Oh, Jim, I guess we need to ask you if you would like a break. Okay. Okay, come on up. We only have one microphone, and we're having a microphone for here and one for the conference. So I want to make sure they can hear your voice.
How lucky are they?
Very lucky, in my opinion. We're like a stand-up comedy team today.
Well, it's nice to stand up.
This is true.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity and for us to address the graduation. We haven't had a lot of meetings lately. Hard to pull school people together during the summer. So we're looking forward to meeting again later in the summer, early fall. But we've done a lot of work over the last year and a half, and there's two things I would like to share with you, and not to surprise my co-host here, but number one, we didn't change anything. Now, why didn't we change it?
We didn't really change a lot. What we did was reclassified and regrouped.
Oh, no, you're getting ahead.
Oh, okay.
We didn't change anything because you can already do a lot of things.
Oh,
Within
yes.
the graduation requirements that exist presently, we look at it as 21 credits that are required by the state, and you're all familiar with the language arts, social studies, math and science, and so forth. And that we ask that all graduates meet the 21. The second part of that is local districts have the opportunity to add, and all but one district, I believe in the state of Kansas, and even the one might have changed recently since we outed them, have increased graduation requirements. Typically in the area of language arts, social studies, math, and typically most districts have about 23, 24 credits that they require for graduation. Okay, and this is all local decisions by the local board. One of the questions you would have at SEAC is two parts. Number one, you are already using the flexibility that's built into the requirements as they're put forth by the legislature and the state board. And that is to modify graduation requirements to meet the special needs and unique situations that we find ourselves in with special education students in particular. You know, so you've already been doing it, and we've actually taken that back as a model for the rest of the state, because too often there's a rigidity in the requirements that sometimes prevents students from graduating who indeed could graduate. You know, typically because, well, as a former principal, I'll say this, we're hesitant to be flexible at the last moment. You know, there's a fairness doctrine, but many people don't even know that they have the authority, principals, to alter the graduation requirements to meet the needs of a student. You know, so one of the biggest revelations that we can bring to the field is the fact that you have a lot of authority already to meet the needs of students, especially based on IPSs and IEPs, that will open the door, I think, for graduation. Not make it easier, but make it more meaningful. And that's a big difference. We're not trying to make it easier to graduate. We're trying to make it more meaningful by using that concept of the IPS and the IEP. You know, so this is one of the big reveals, if you will. And you'd be surprised how many people don't know, when I say people, how many local boards and local administrators, and even in special education, don't know that they have quite a bit of authority in how they structure and manage graduation requirements in their district. So that's one of the big reveals. And I have to say, honestly, that working as a principal for many years, it really was an eye-opener to work with an IEP team with students for graduation. And and we're kind of basing that, you know, whole transition on that experience. So thank you for what you've done in terms of seeing students in an individual light instead of as a herd, a whole big group of them, you know. Now, so what's going to happen next?
You want me to talk
Yeah.
on that? Okay. So when we started talking to the Kansas Board of Education, we wanted to make sure that it was very clear every school district still maintains their local level of control. So we looked at the revamping of how we categorize some of our classes. So used to be 4 whole credits of language arts, and so now we're still recommending, right now these are still just recommendations, nothing has been voted on and approved, but the recommendation is 3.5 English language arts credit, and that other half credit that used to make up the 4 is a communications credit. So when we look at all of our kids, like our 18 to 21-year-old kids, what does a communications credit look like? Well, on their individualized plan of study, it could be working with their communications board. It could be practicing communicating with teachers or peers in their building. Communication could be debate, forensics. It covers all exceptionalities. So we did include the gifted and the talented in all of the populations when we were talking about that. Maybe we have kids who are in 4-H and they are the leader of their 4-H and they're doing public speaking, and we can get documentation that they are doing that. Local boards of control could make sure that schools are granting credits for experiences and exposures when people are practicing public speaking, not just learning it per se out of a textbook. So the second area was, instead of calling it social studies or social sciences, the retooling or renaming is going to societies and humanities. And there's been some debate within this category because there are groups of educators that we hold very dear who all of us in this committee are very passionate about how we perform services and provide needs for our special populations. The arts community was very concerned because the way we redefined this, instead of 1 whole credit for fine arts, we called it half a credit for fine arts, but added an additional credit for arts and humanities. So to us, when we were looking at this, we felt like this was an increase in the arts. Instead of just getting a half credit or 1 credit, we have kids who we know that's their wheelhouse. They are into music, they're into drama, they're into theater, they're into band, they're into the arts program or visual arts. So we wanted to give them a place to document on their transcript towards their graduation experiences and exposures that lines up with their individualized plan of study, more opportunities to do that, and not just putting it into a broad electives category. So there would be 2.5 credits of social studies that were traditional, which would include world history, either early or ancient, 1 whole year of history, and a half credit of government. And then we had the 1 credit of humanities and a half credit required for everyone of fine arts. The humanities and fine arts, there's a little bit of discussion between where foreign languages would be included in that, but they are considered part of the humanities and part of the arts. So those are conversations that are still ongoing, as well as some of the other elective social studies credits. And then instead of dividing science and math, we wanted to collaborate with those 2 teams and make sure that we look at them instead of teaching them in isolation, teaching them real-world application and using them in the fields of STEM or STEAM based on what the local board decides to put into place. So we still want 3 math, 3 science. We are not going to delineate between which math and which science. We would like something to be algebraic or geometric, but not necessarily algebra or geometry, but science and math merged together. So looking at those in that way, with the sciences, we want them to be physical sciences, biological sciences, or a science that involves both earth and space. So when we looked at that, we also said we want 1 dedicated separate STEM class. That could be in the career tech ed field, that could be in advanced mathematics or computer science. We are asking kids to engage in some way with like a digital citizenship class, some kind of tech-based class. And then the last, which I think, I mean, I'm speaking from just what I saw within our group of people that were meeting. We were meeting once a month, and then we got to every other week, because we needed to get a presentation put together, and we wanted to survey stakeholders in the state of Kansas. So when you asked what was next, we jumped in and put a survey out to as many school districts as we could, expecting 200, 300, 400 would be a good reply. We got over 1,200 replies from, yeah, which I saw Carrie's face. That is not usually, I've been told that's not common. So we got teachers, we got parents, we got students. The word got out, and we heard a lot from all of the different communities about how important each of these are, and everybody is on board. Instead of saying we're going to call them elective credits, because it kind of seems like busy work, and in education we want it to have value, we want it to be reliable, and we want it to be something that we're going to use when we leave the school buildings. We're calling them employability and life skills. We have several kids who need 6 credits. Maybe they're doing work study. Maybe they're doing job shadowing. So all of our kids in any of the areas of special education are going to get, maybe it's a living skills, they have a cooking class, or they're practicing laundry, or maybe it's having job interviews, a job skills class. Any of our skills classes, instead of having them identifiable for a special ed kid on a transcript, any kid in the school can now have those as part of their individualized plan of study. And that will also increase and enhance the collaboration with the regular ed and special ed populations within a classroom. So I saw this very much as a win-win situation. So we have 1/2 credit is still going to be required for PE. There were several people on our survey that said, why do we have to do PE? Because we want people to be physically fit for their life. We want them to continue learning different games that they may have a broad experience with and most people may not have known they loved pickleball, but they learned it in PE class, and so now they're out in the pickleball group or here at Chicken and Pickle. We want them to be lifetime physically fit in Kansas. So we also included a half credit of health so we can give them information and access to mental health, physical health, social emotional health skills in the school setting. And then we made sure that we included, because we found this very important, and our legislators weighed in about halfway through when we were meeting, that there be some kind of a financial literacy class. So that is not being considered a math class. It is a class that kids would have required to graduate. So on all different levels, Kansas kids are going to have some kind of financial literacy class. And then the remaining 4.5 credits would be credits that are aligned to every kid's individualized plan of study. So as a freshman, if I think I'm going to go out and be a singer on a stage somewhere, and then as a sophomore I decide, well, no, I'm going to be a nurse, and then I actually take some nursing classes through Washburn Tech or some kind of technical trade school, and I go, oh, I really can't handle this side of blood. And then my junior year, all of these are okay. We understand kids are going to change their minds. Parents are going to guide as they get to their junior and senior years. They may want to make all those decisions on their own. We understand all those things, but the individualized plan of study has to be reevaluated every year so that their classes line up with what they need, so we give them experiences and exposures, and every local district is going to be able to decide how they're going to provide those opportunities to the kids in their communities.
Okay, thank you. God, that sounded like a lot, didn't it? Actually, when you talk about it like we are, it's kind of scary because it really comes down to the IPS, the Individual Plan of Study. You know, that is going to be a driving force. But we have more. Students will all complete the FAFSA. You know, and you all know what the FAFSA is. There's two reasons for that. One is that all students should be focused on post-secondary. Yeah, and the FAFSA, although it is not an admissions, it does provide the family the structure support, you know, for financial aid in the future. Now, that said, I call this a pillow requirement. It's really soft. Because if someone says, well, I don't want to do it, family, for one reason or another, they can opt out of it. You know, the state of Kansas is one of the few states that doesn't require the FAFSA at this time. And we have about 47% of our students complete that while they're in their senior year. And states like Arkansas and Iowa, they're all up around 80% completion rates. And for some students, not completing it while they're in high school is then a liability as they move forward and they decide in July 28th that they want to go to college, and they don't have that form in power, so they can use it. Also, we're going to be adding students will complete 2 or more post-secondary assets in either two of categories. One is academic choices, and one is career and and real-world choices. So, for instance, those post-secondary assets could include work keys, college credit hours, state assessments, scores at 3 or 4, ASVAB completion, senior project, or completing a Regents curriculum. While in the career and real world, they need to have a youth apprenticeship, internship, community service hours, workplace learning experiences, a seal of biliteracy, CTE Scholar, Eagle Scout, 4-H, Kansas Key Award. You know, there's a variety of different ways you can get that. And that comes right down to special ed students, and in terms of when we're working with them, those outside opportunities are really important and are now going to be part of the graduation. You know, putting all this together sounds kind of challenging, but there is the mantra that I say, it's local. You take the information we provide you, and you provide for the students' IPSs, but with the local resources that are at hand. So whether you're in Sublette or you're in Kansas City, or you're in Goodland or you're in Pittsburgh, you are the drivers when When I say the driver is the school district and the student and their parents. So there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, but really what it comes down to is the IPS and schools changing the support systems they provide students as they head for the exit or graduation. Wow, didn't think that would take that long, did you? So who has a question? Oh, come on. First question, not yours, Bert. First question. When does this all start? Okay, good. See, great minds think alike. This is going to be coming to the board sometime in August or September. There's still stakeholders. There's still a lot of work to do on them. We've given you kind of the big cloud. We have to bring that cloud into alignment so we can bring it then to the state board for their first look at it. We've already talked to them at different times. I've been providing reports, but we as a task force made a report just recently. And I will tell you that it will probably be August or into October when we do this, and there'll be a lot of dialogue around the state, hopefully. The board isn't going to just jump in this and us change them one day and then the next. Then there's the question of when and how do we implement it? Is this implemented immediately for students, or is it going to be over time? So, for instance, we've had everything from some things we could implement like immediately with a particular class, graduate class, in 1 year, but there are other things that might not take effect unless you're a 7th grader and you've got 6 more years to go. Now that brings up another question when I say 6 years. Graduation should not be a calendared event. We have graduation as an expectation. You enter in your freshman semester and you've got the 8 semesters to get finished. And if you don't finish in those 8 semesters, somehow you're a failure. And I've dealt with that with special education students. Why can't I graduate with my class? We're trying to focus away from class to needs because actually graduation is happening for more students all the time early. Okay? We've had many cases of students who are leaving after 2.5, 3 years because you don't have to be in a class for 1,080 hours to get the credit. Now, and then on the other hand, why is it that a class has to end on a particular date? Most of these, and then you either pass or you fail, And quite frankly, those are all finance answers. They're not academic answers. So we would like to have more academic answers than finance answers. And that's going to have to include the legislature. So there's a lot of pieces yet to go, because right now, if you don't graduate in 4 years, well, I guess you have 5. They pay for 1 more semester. But, schools don't get any money, so why should they keep them? Or start early. We don't get any benefit if a student graduates early. We lose funding. So there's a lot of things that we have to work that are outside what you would normally say graduation requirements. It's really about the culture of how we're operating our schools. And we want to get closer to the culture that you have in meeting the needs of the students that have challenges, to make it available to all. So, any more questions? That was a good question. Thanks. Did I hit, Bert, did I get get it answered, or? And more. Well, thank you. If you have a question or you have an issue or express it, and believe me, there is no hesitation on the part of a lot of people right now to contact us, primarily in the arts. And we are not getting rid of the visual arts. As a matter of fact, we broadened it. But, and then there's a couple of groups that haven't figured this out yet, so we haven't heard from them. So I have a whole new couple of groups that I'll be hearing from soon. We'll see. It's a lot of fun. I understand now, we both do, and so does the team and I think the state board, why over the years committees have been formed to implement change in the graduation and kind of gone quietly into the night. Touches a lot of bases, touches a lot of buttons in our expectations, realities, and our own academic areas. So, hey, I want to thank Tish for her great work. She's been just terrific to work with, and Jared Furman, who is from Base of Linwood, and the other 47 people that were on the task force with us. It was a really good experience, tough experience, but thank you. All right,
you.
thanks.
So, yeah. All right, so to move forward, according to our agenda at 3:10, we are going to check in with the ex officio members for their reports. Do we have anything written that we could read from those members? Are any of the members here? Okay. Okay, Lena, are you ready, or do you guys want to take a break? I don't want to skip over breaks. I know they're important to people. So since it's the last thing on the agenda, we can go right in, but I just want to make sure you're ready. Okay, that's wonderful. Bert, did you want to present Ashley's? Or you want to? Okay, that's where I'm going to step aside and let you do that. Thank you.
Maybe. Yep, the Casey update, right? You just want to go through that? Sure. You just go down the page.
The down arrows or
Yeah.
the page down? I'm going to drop this down in my line of sight. Okay, nose level. There we go. Okay, I'm Lena Kisner, and I am an administrator of special ed programs, but I'm also the president-elect of KC, so happy to visit with you about what's going on. So KC, for those of you who don't know, we are the Kansas Association of Special Education Administrators. Anyone who administers special ed programs in Kansas can be a member. That includes coordinators, assistant directors, directors. We've got varying types of members, including some principals and superintendents, some members of the SETS team and folks like that, as well as retired special ed directors that now provide technical assistance. And so we are actually a state-level branch of the Council of Administrators of Special Education, CASE, which is a division underneath the Council for Exceptional Children, or CEC, and we also have affiliations with USA Kansas, along with their partners. And so our members have opportunities to network with quite a few people across the state, and we try to be partners with superintendents and building leaders and just general education overall. So our mission is special education leaders united in advocacy and committed to the success of all children. So like we've talked about today, we're not just working with children with disabilities, but children with exceptionalities, so gifted included in that. And then our vision is really just to be the voice. And part of that is advocacy on the legislative front. So now I'm going to kind of go off script here. So some of the things that we've been doing with Casey, we have a legislative committee that's chaired by Patty Carter, who's a special ed director from Greenbush. And she's very active at the state level and keeping us apprised of what's going on in Kansas so that we can provide information to our local representatives, advocate for special education funding. For very few minutes, we had fully funding of our state special education categorical aid, and then I guess they got a little worried and took that away. And then just this past month, there was a group of us from Kansas kind of representing a wide section of the state from western Kansas all the way to eastern Kansas that went to Washington, D.C. as part of the Special Education Legislative Summit, and we met with our Kansas delegation there in D.C. We were able to meet with Sharice Davids and Bob Estes, and then the others, we met with staffers that manage education in the Senator's and Representatives' office, really talking about, at the federal level, fully funding IDEA, which we hear in Kansas, you know, if the feds would do their job, then Kansas would be meeting requirements. And so when IDEA was passed, the law said, you know, they said, hey, we will fund 40% of the excess cost of educating kids with disabilities, and they're closer to 17%. And so, you know, that's just causing shortfalls and putting a lot of extra pressure on the state. And then when the state doesn't fund the 92% that they said they would fund, then that leaves a lot of extra for the local districts. So a big part of what we do in KC is coordinate those advocacy messages and trying to really support special ed directors, which folks across the state and has been over the last several years, in learning how to advocate. Most of us were not given any kind of training in being politically active and knowing how to advocate. So those are some things that we've been working on. So we had actually a retreat yesterday for all the officers, and then we have an executive board meeting tonight, and then the membership meeting is tomorrow. And so some of the things we're working on some website upgrades so that we can be a little more active on social media, keep things a little more current. And then in our discussions, we really want to focus this year on a couple different things. One being, how do we support and mentor new special ed directors across the state? We have some really great mentor programs already in existence with Kelly and some of the service centers. But as special ed directors, you know, it's our responsibility to help our counterparts navigate a very challenging position that changes minute by minute sometimes. So we're really focused on what is our role as a state organization to support new directors and still even experienced directors as we continue to learn. And then we're really focusing as well on communication and how can we make sure that we are present with messaging and all these young folks that like social media and all of us older folks who are not very good at it. We're trying to figure out, you know, our comfort levels and communicating in those ways. And then we're really just wanting to overall just be better responsiveness to our members and making sure that we're meeting their needs. And one of the projects that's kind of a continuing conversation that's happening right now as well is a collaboration with KC and KSDE sets and the Kansas State Schools for the Blind and Deaf. And so we had a conversation this summer just really recognizing there were some things that we all need to learn about one another to keep those partnerships moving forward across the state. And so we're really excited about the energy that's come from that initial meeting and our continued work together on that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about KC if anyone has them.
Are there any other items of business that you guys know we would need to discuss? Next meeting date. Kayla, what is our next meeting date? September 15th. And are we meeting Zoom or do we know yet? Okay. We have several who are with us online, so we want to make sure all the voices are heard because not all members could be here. Kayla, would you be willing to send out like an email and everybody, or if we were on Zoom, we would all vote on that little click button that you give us, but since some of us are actually here, maybe an email is the most efficient way to do this. Okay, so there is a group that could possibly get together in Topeka, but we don't have everybody that's available, and we understand all the interesting situations that everybody's finding ourselves in. So we do want input on that. We will, when do you think we can get that out? Next week? Okay. Okay, for those that may not been able to hear Bert because you're not in the room, he said that there is going to be the option of meeting face-to-face, totally with Zoom, or possibly if we can find a location that gives us the access that we need, then looking at a hybrid option. So if everybody could vote and do that, get that back to Kayla as soon as possible, that would greatly be appreciated so that we can get those plans made, especially if we look at a hybrid location. Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion? We didn't have anything to vote on today, but if we need to make a motion to adjourn our meeting. Okay, there is no further business, so I am going to say that we are adjourned and we'll call this meeting concluded. Thank you.